Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Big 12 Report, presented by Dr. Pepper. I'm Wendell Barnhouse, Big12Sports.com correspondent, alongside my co-host this week, Cassandra Novi.
Well, we're headed into the home stretch of our spring sports, but we still have some more basketball news to talk about.
Right. In the last 2 weeks, 3 Big 12 schools have made coaching changes in basketball. Kansas State and TCU will have new coaches on the men's side, while Texas will have a new women's coach.
And Wendell, you were actually over in Fort Worth this past week whenever TCU announced its new coach. Here's a report on all 3 of the new coaches and a welcome to the Big 12 family.
TCU will play its first season in the Big 12 under a new coach, as the school announced Monday that Trent Johnson will take over for Jim Christian. He left to take the job at Ohio University. Johnson spent the last 4 seasons as the coach at LSU, and prior to that, he coached at Stanford for 4 seasons. He started his head coaching career at Nevada.
Well, I'm here to tell you right now, this is where I want to lay my bed and lay my stone. I am completely so comfortable about wanting to be here for the rest of my life and wanting to get this thing to the elite level. And when I say the elite level, Chris talked about it a little bit. I mean, Sweet 16, Stanford, Nevada, so on and so forth. You know, the bottom line is winning your conference championship. The bottom line is that's the goal.
Johnson noted that it will be a difficult task to raise TCU's basketball fortunes. The Horned Frogs have made just 7 NCAA tournament appearances and just 2 over the last 25 years. But Johnson referenced how TCU's football program has flourished under Coach Gary Patterson as a reason why he could be successful.
You know, and having an opportunity to visit with Coach Patterson real quickly, you know, it was real interesting to start talking about our paths. And you know, when I look at him and what he's been able to achieve and whatever he's been able to do here, it's because he's involved everybody. And that's one of the things that I really feel like with myself and all of you all and all the players in the community of Fort Worth and Dallas, that's what we're going to have to do. So,
when Frank Martin left to take the job at South Carolina, Kansas State moved quickly and hired Bruce Weber to replace Martin. Weber coached the last 9 seasons at Illinois, and prior to that had a successful run at Southern Illinois. In 2005, with Weber as coach, Illinois reached the national championship game. He is a 33-year veteran of coaching and has a career record of 313 and 155. Karen Aston was named the women's basketball coach at Texas. Aston served as an assistant coach for 8 years with Hall of Famer Jody Conrad at Texas and spent 1 season as associate head coach at Baylor. Aston was the head coach at Charlotte for 4 years and spent last season as the head coach at North Texas. She took over a team that won 5 games and won 15 games last season.
Well, from the hardwood to the diamonds, the Big 12 is proving to be competitive yet again in another sport, this time in baseball and softball. What's been happening in the first half of the season for these 2 sports?
Well, in baseball, A&M is up to number 2 in the national rankings, but Baylor is still on top of the standings. The Bears have continued their record-setting start with a 3-game sweep at Missouri last weekend. That gives them a 12-0 conference record. Now, Texas A&M and Texas are tied for second with 7-2 records. Now, the Aggies will face Baylor and Texas on the final 2 weekends of April, and Baylor and Texas will meet on the last weekend of the regular season. Now, 4 teams are crowded at the top of the softball standings. Oklahoma is in first place, followed by Missouri, Texas, and Texas A&M. Now, those 4 teams also are ranked 14th or higher in this week's national polls. Texas is number 5, Oklahoma is number 6, Missouri is 9th, and Texas A&M is number 14. Now, mark your calendars for the first weekend in May when Texas and Oklahoma will meet in Norman for a 3-game series. In the national statistics, Texas is number 2 in hitting and number 16 in pitching. On the other side, Oklahoma is number 1 in pitching, number 11 in hitting.
It's definitely going to come down to the wire with softball and how these teams play out for the last final part of the season. Now, we had one school who did a special good deed for the area of Dallas this past week that was worth a shout out. What else is on your agenda for the shout outs this week?
Well, that first shout out needs to be loud and very deserving for Texas Tech and the Lubbock community. The Texas Tech football team delivered 35 tons of supplies to help tornado victims in Lancaster, one of the Dallas suburbs pounded by a series of tornadoes last week. Texas Tech used its football and band equipment trailers to deliver the goods, and 30 players and members of the coaching staff traveled the 300 miles to deliver the supplies and help with the cleanup. And my second shout out goes to the Oklahoma women's gymnastics team, which won the NCAA regional title for the 3rd straight year. The Sooners will advance to the NCAA national championships for the 9th consecutive year. And Missouri's Rachel Updike will also compete as an individual in the NCAAs, and those will be held April 20th and the 21st. And the final shout out goes to the Texas Tech men's tennis team, which is on a serious roll. 2 weeks ago, the Red Raiders ended an 18-year losing streak to Baylor with a 6-1 victory in Waco in a match that took 5 hours. And last Saturday, Texas Tech, which is up to number 23 in the rankings, defeated number 25 Texas A&M. Now that snapped a 5-match losing streak to the Aggies that had dated back to 2008.
Well, Wendell, do you think you could last 5 hours on a tennis court?
I don't think so. I could hardly last 5 minutes doing this show.
Me either. Well, that wraps things up for this week. If you'd like to stay connected to the Big 12 throughout the week, you can hit us up on Twitter or find us on Facebook. For Wendell Barnhouse, I'm Cassandra Novi, and have a great week.